The Galactic Academy was a place of prestige and wonder, its sprawling towers of glass and steel floating above the surface of the serene ocean world, Oranis. This was where the brightest minds from across the galaxy gathered, species from countless worlds uniting to share knowledge, foster peace, and study the mysteries of the universe. Among its hallowed halls, students debated philosophy, deciphered the secrets of ancient civilizations, and learned the intricate laws that governed interstellar politics. For students like Ilrix, a wide-eyed Icarian with skin like flowing water, and Kron, a burly Throsk with bark-like scales, the Academy was a place of endless discovery. Yet, there was one subject that loomed like a shadow over their studies: humanity. Humans were the enigma of the galaxy, spoken of in hushed tones and fleeting whispers. Their contributions to science and technology were undeniable, yet their reputation was marred by tales of unmatched violence and destruction. After the Concord War, a conflict that had reshaped the galaxy a century ago, humans had been banned from participating in galactic conflicts by unanimous vote of the Galactic Council. For Ilrix and Kron, the question of humanity's ban was an irresistible puzzle. It was the subject of late-night debates in the dormitory commons, where they argued and speculated alongside students from every corner of the galaxy. And so, when the Academy announced a new seminar titled The Legacy of Humanity in Galactic Warfare, the two signed up immediately. The seminar was held in the amphitheater of the Academy's central tower, a vast chamber that could seat thousands. Holographic displays hovered in the air, depicting scenes from galactic history. The lecturer, Professor Arcantable, a Sorin with glimmering wings and an air of quiet authority, stood at the center, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the assembled students. "Welcome," Table began, his multifaceted eyes scanning the crowd. "Today, we embark on a journey into one of the most contentious and controversial chapters of galactic history: humanity's role in the Concord War and their subsequent ban from all military alliances." The room fell silent, the air heavy with anticipation. "Many of you have heard the stories," Table continued. "Stories of humans who could turn the tide of a battle with their cunning. Stories of their ferocity, their resilience. But today, we will separate fact from fiction. We will examine why the Council deemed it necessary to exclude an entire species from warfare." Ilrix leaned forward in her seat, her translucent fingers clasped together. Kron, seated beside her, crossed his massive arms, his bark-like skin creaking softly. "I hope this isn't just propaganda," he muttered. "Shoo," Ilrix hissed. "I want to hear this." Table began with the origins of humanity's involvement in galactic affairs. He described Earth's late arrival to the interstellar stage, their rapid adaptation to alien technology, and their initial struggles to find a place in a galaxy dominated by older, more established species. "For centuries, humanity remained on the periphery," Table said. "They were traders, explorers, and diplomats. Their military capabilities, while formidable, were largely untested in interstellar conflicts. That changed with the Concord War. The holographic displays shifted, showing scenes from the war, fleets clashing in the void, planets engulfed in fire, soldiers fighting in the ruins of cities." Ilrix felt a chill run down her spine as the images played out. "The Concord War began as a dispute over resource-rich systems in the Tarvanis cluster," Table explained. "It escalated quickly, drawing in dozens of species and fracturing alliances. Humanity, at the time, was neutral. But as the war dragged on, their strategic expertise became highly sought after. The display showed a human fleet, sleek and angular, arriving in a contested system. Their ships were outnumbered, but they moved with precision, striking key targets and sowing chaos among the enemy ranks. Humanity's entry into the war was a turning point," Table said. "They brought with them a unique understanding of conflict, one that blended technological ingenuity with psychological warfare. They were not the strongest, nor the most numerous, but they were the most adaptable. And that made them dangerous." As Table spoke, Ilrix noticed a change in the room's atmosphere. Some students leaned forward, their curiosity piqued, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The tales of humanity's prowess were both inspiring and unsettling. But their methods came at a cost, Table continued, his tone darkening. Humanity's ability to innovate under pressure often led to collateral damage on an unprecedented scale. Entire ecosystems were destroyed, civilian populations displaced. To humanity, victory was paramount, and they were willing to pay any price to achieve it. The holographic display shifted again, showing the aftermath of a human-led offensive, a planet reduced to rubble, its surface scarred by orbital bombardments. They didn't just win battles, Table said. They annihilated the conditions for their enemies to recover. It was effective, yes, but it was also terrifying. Ilrix felt a knot form in her stomach. She turned to Kron, whose expression was unreadable. "What do you think?" she whispered. Kron's bark-like face creased in thought. "They're ruthless," he said quietly. "But it's not just ruthlessness. It's precision. Like they always know exactly where to hit." The seminar continued, delving into humanity's most infamous campaigns. Table described Operation Polaris, a campaign that turned the tide of the war but left an entire star system uninhabitable. He spoke of the siege of Helion Prime, where human forces, outnumbered and outgunned, held their ground through sheer determination and clever use of terrain. By the end of the lecture, the students were left with more questions than answers. Was humanity's ban justified? Were their actions a necessary evil, or had they gone too far? As the students filed out of the amphitheater, Ilrix and Kron lingered behind, deep in conversation. "They weren't monsters," Ilrix said. "They were desperate. They did what they thought was necessary." Kron grunted. "Maybe. But there's a reason the council banned them. They were too good at it. Too dangerous." Before Ilrix could respond, a voice interrupted them. "Fascinating, isn't it?" They turned to see Professor Table, his wings shimmering in the dim light. "If you're interested in learning more, I suggest visiting the restricted archives. There's a collection of first-hand accounts from the war. It might give you a different perspective." Ilrix's eyes lit up. "The restricted archives? How do we access them?" Table smiled faintly. "I'm sure you'll find a way." That night, Ilrix and Kron sat in their dormitory, poring over the Academy's network. The restricted archives were protected by layers of encryption, but Ilrix's knack for technology and Kron's brute force approach soon found a way through. What they uncovered would change everything. The restricted archives were a treasure trove of classified information, sealed away from the public for good reason. As Ilrix and Kron sifted through the files, their dormitory screen glowed with holographic projections of data streams, battle footage, and first-hand accounts from those who had faced humanity in the Concord War. "What is this?" Kron muttered, his bark-like hands hovering over a glowing display. "These aren't just reports. These are personal logs." Ilrix leaned closer, her translucent fingers gliding across the controls. "They must have been uploaded by officers during the war. Look, this one's from a Dravarnic fleet captain." She tapped a file, and a holographic image of a weary alien officer flickered into view. His 6 eyes blinked slowly as he began to speak, his voice laden with exhaustion and fear. "Personal log, Captain Thyx of the 3rd Dravarnic Fleet. Date, 1.45 Seawar Standard. I've commanded ships for 3 decades. I've seen battles that would make most beings shudder. But nothing prepared us for the humans. It began with silence. Our sensors picked up no movement, no signals. We thought we had the element of surprise as we approached the Deneb outpost. Then, without warning, they struck. They didn't come at us head-on like most fools do. No, they flanked us. One moment, we were scanning the void, and the next, their ships emerged from behind the debris fields, as if the stars themselves had turned against us. Precision strikes disabled our engines before we could fire a single shot. They cut us apart without mercy, but not without purpose." Kron frowned as the log ended. "They're hunters," he said. "They stalk their prey, strike where it hurts the most." Ilrix nodded, her eyes wide. "They don't just fight battles. They dismantle them. It's not about numbers or brute force, it's about control. She accessed another file, this one from a varying ground commander. The footage was grainy but clear enough to show the aftermath of a battle. Smoking ruins stretched across the horizon, and the commander's voice trembled as he spoke. Field report, Commander Hekrix of the Varying Ground Forces. Date, 2.31 C War Standard. We fortified the city of Threelas for months, preparing for the human assault. We had defenses that would have repelled any known enemy. But when the humans came, they didn't attack the city. They attacked our water supply. They poisoned the reservoirs, sabotaged the filtration systems. Within days, our troops were too weak to fight. They didn't need to breach our walls. They waited until we were dying of thirst, then walked in unopposed. I hate them for what they did. But I can't deny their brilliance. They don't fight wars, they end them. Ilrix sat back, her face pale. They don't just win. They make sure their enemies can never recover. Kron's bark-like skin creaked as he shifted uneasily. That's why the council banned them. They weren't just a threat to their enemies, they were a threat to the balance of the galaxy. The two students spent hours combing through the archives, uncovering account after account of humanity's terrifying efficiency in war. One file detailed Operation Abyss, a covert mission in which human operatives infiltrated an enemy shipyard and sabotaged its reactors, causing a chain reaction that destroyed an entire fleet before it could launch. Another recounted the Battle of Eleron, where human forces used decoys and psychological tactics to trick a Dominion fleet into firing on itself. But it wasn't just the tactics that stood out. It was the mindset. The humans fought as if survival itself was on the line. They adapted to every situation, exploited every weakness, and refused to be constrained by convention. They're problem solvers, Ilrix said. Every battle is a puzzle, and they're the only ones who see the whole picture. Kron shook his head. Or they're desperate. They fight like they have no other choice. The deeper they delved into the archives, the darker the stories became. There were accounts of scorched earth tactics, where human forces left entire planets uninhabitable to deny them to the enemy. One particularly chilling log came from a Zelvani diplomat who witnessed the aftermath of humanity's retaliation against an enemy fleet that had attacked one of their colonies. Personal memo, Diplomat Cressy of the Zelvani Concord. Date, 3.12 C War Standard. I thought I knew the horrors of war. I have seen cities burn, children orphaned, and entire species driven to the brink of extinction. But nothing compares to what I saw at Altheon 4. The humans called it retaliation. The enemy fleet had bombarded their colony, killing millions. In response, the humans deployed a weapon that turned the planet's atmosphere to fire. Everything, cities, forests, oceans, was consumed. They said it was to send a message. I will never forget that message. Humanity is not to be provoked. Ilrix closed the file, her hands trembling. No wonder they're banned. They're not just warriors, they're destroyers. Kron was silent for a long moment. But they didn't start the war. They only reacted. If they hadn't fought, would the Concord have survived? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Humanity's methods were brutal, but they had been effective. Without their intervention, the war might have dragged on for decades, leaving even more devastation in its wake. As the first rays of Aranis' twin suns broke over the horizon, Ilrix and Kron sat in silence, their minds racing with everything they had learned. The humanity they had imagined, a species of inventors, explorers, and diplomats, had been replaced by a far more complex reality. They're not what we thought they were, Ilrix said finally. They're not heroes, but they're not monsters either. There's something else, Kron agreed. Something the galaxy wasn't ready for. A chime from the terminal interrupted their thoughts. It was a message from Professor Table. I see you've accessed the archives, the message read. Good. Now you understand why humanity was banned. But there is more to the story. Meet me in my office. There's something you need to see. Ilrix and Kron exchanged a glance. Whatever Table had to show them, they knew it would change their understanding of humanity and the galaxy forever. Ilrix and Kron made their way to Professor Table's office, the tension between them palpable. The corridors of the Galactic Academy were quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by an eerie stillness. It was early morning, and the twin suns of Oranis cast a soft glow through the crystalline walls, creating a dreamlike atmosphere. Table's office was located in a secluded corner of the Academy's central tower. As the students approached, the door slid open silently, revealing the professor seated behind a desk cluttered with holographic displays. His shimmering wings folded neatly against his back, and his multifaceted eyes regarded them with a mix of curiosity and expectation. "You've seen the archives," Table said, gesturing for them to enter. "Good. But there's something you need to understand." Ilrix and Kron exchanged a glance before stepping inside. The door closed behind them with a faint hiss, sealing them in a space that felt both intimate and imposing. "What more is there to understand?" Kron asked, his voice low. "The humans are terrifying." "They're more than that," Table replied. "Their actions during the Concord War were brutal, yes, but they were also a response to a galaxy that underestimated them. What you saw in the archives is only part of the story." He tapped a control on his desk, and a new holographic display appeared in the air above them. It showed an older human, his face lined with age and weariness, seated in a dimly lit room. The recording was labeled simply, "Testimony, General Alan Grayson." The hologram flickered, and the human began to speak. His voice was deep and steady, carrying the weight of countless battles. "My name is General Alan Grayson," he said. "I was the commander of Earth's forces during the Concord War. If you're watching this, then you're trying to understand why humanity was banned from galactic warfare. Let me tell you why." The general leaned forward, his eyes intense. "When the war began, we didn't want to get involved. Earth was still finding its place in the galaxy, and we had no interest in becoming entangled in conflicts that didn't concern us. But the war came to us. Our colonies were attacked, our people slaughtered. We didn't start this fight, but we couldn't stand by and let it continue." He paused, his gaze hardening. "We fought because we had to. And when we fight to win." The galaxy wasn't ready for what that meant. The recording shifted to footage from the war, overlaid with Grayson's narration. It showed human forces deploying innovative tactics, using decoys and psychological warfare to outmaneuver their enemies. It showed soldiers fighting in the ruins of cities, their faces grim but resolute. And it showed the aftermath of their victories, destruction on a scale that defied comprehension. "We didn't have the numbers or the resources to fight a prolonged war," Grayson continued. "So we used what we had, our minds, our ingenuity, our willingness to do whatever it took to survive. To us, war isn't just about weapons or ships. It's about breaking your enemy's will to fight. And we did." The general's voice softened, a note of sorrow creeping in. "But there's a cost to that kind of war. We did things we're not proud of. Things we'll carry with us for the rest of our lives. We ended the war, but we also changed the galaxy forever." As the recording ended, Table turned to Ilrix and Kron. "Do you see now? Humanity isn't banned from galactic warfare because they're monsters. They're banned because they showed us what war truly is." Ilrix frowned, her translucent fingers twisting nervously. "But, wasn't it necessary? If they hadn't fought, the Concord might have fallen." "Perhaps," Table said. "But the Council feared what humanity's methods would mean for the future of the galaxy. If every species adopted their approach, war would no longer be a means of resolving disputes, it would become a path to total annihilation." Kron's bark-like skin creaked as he shifted uncomfortably. "So the Council punished them for being too good at surviving?" "Survival is one thing," Table replied. "Humanity's methods went beyond survival. They weaponized their adaptability, their creativity, their ability to think in ways no other species could. They turned war into an art and a science. And that terrified the Council." Table tapped another control, and the display shifted to show the Council's deliberations after the war. The chamber was filled with representatives from countless species, their voices raised in heated debate. "The humans must be banned," one delegate shouted. "Their methods are barbaric." "They saved us," another countered. "Without them, the Concord would have fallen." "But at what cost?" a third voice argued. "Entire planets were destroyed. Ecosystems rendered uninhabitable. If we allow this to continue, the galaxy will descend into chaos." The debate raged on, but in the end, the Council voted unanimously to ban humanity from participating in galactic conflicts. The decision was controversial, but it was upheld, and humanity was forced to withdraw from the interstellar stage. Ilrix and Kron sat in stunned silence as the display faded. The room felt heavy with the weight of what they had learned. "So, what now?" Ilrix asked. "What do we do with this knowledge?" Table leaned forward, his wings shimmering faintly. "You think, Ilrix. You question. You understand. Humanity's story is a warning, but it's also a lesson. They showed us the cost of war, but they also showed us the value of peace. It's up to you to decide what to take from it." Kron nodded slowly. "They're not what we thought they were. They're complicated." "Exactly," Table said. "And in that complexity lies the truth. Humanity isn't just a species of warriors or inventors. They're a reflection of what we could become, both the best and the worst of us." As Ilrix and Kron left Table's office, their minds were racing with questions. Humanity's story was no longer just a tale of violence and destruction, it was a story of survival, sacrifice, and the choices that define a species. And as they walked through the Academy's halls, they realized something else. The galaxy's future would depend not just on understanding humanity's past, but on learning from it. The days following their meeting with Professor Table were a whirlwind for Ilrix and Kron. The revelations about humanity had shattered their preconceived notions and left them with more questions than answers. They spent their time poring over additional data, debating the implications of humanity's actions, and contemplating the choices the Galactic Council had made. But their contemplation was short-lived. Events at the Academy were about to take a dramatic turn. It began with an emergency announcement. The Academy's intercom system buzzed to life, and a holographic projection of the Chancellor appeared in every common area and dormitory. Her tone was urgent, her usually serene demeanor replaced by concern. "Attention, students and staff. A Dominion fleet has breached the neutral zone and is approaching Oranis. All non-essential personnel are to evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." The halls erupted in chaos as students scrambled to follow the Chancellor's orders. Ships began launching from the Academy's docking bays, carrying evacuees to safety. But Ilrix and Kron were not among them. Instead, they headed straight for Table's office. The professor greeted them with uncharacteristic urgency. His wings were unfurled, and his multifaceted eyes shimmered with worry. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "The Dominion is coming, and this station is a target." "We're not leaving," Kron said firmly. "Not after everything we've learned." "Professor," Ilrix added, her voice steady despite the panic around her. "If the Dominion attacks, the Academy doesn't stand a chance. We need to fight back." Table looked at her incredulously. "Fight back? With what?" "The Academy is a place of learning, not a fortress." Ilrix's eyes gleamed with determination. "Maybe not, but we have something they don't. Humanity's methods." The professor hesitated, but Kron stepped forward. "We've seen what they're capable of. We know how they think. If we can use even a fraction of their tactics, we might stand a chance." Table exhaled slowly, then nodded. "Very well. Follow me." He led them to a hidden section of the Academy, a room filled with forgotten relics of the Concord War. Among the artifacts was a small fleet of drones, advanced prototypes inspired by human designs. Table gestured to the controls. "These were developed during the war but never deployed. They're untested, but they're better than nothing. Ilrix approached the console, her translucent fingers hovering over the interface. I can activate them, she said. But we'll need a plan. The Dominion fleet arrived within hours, their massive ships casting shadows over the ocean world below. From the Academy's observation deck, Ilrix, Kron, and Table watched as the first waves of fighters descended toward the station. They're probing our defenses, Table said. We need to act fast. Ilrix's mind raced. She recalled everything she had learned from the archives, the precision, the adaptability, the psychological warfare. We need to make them think we're more prepared than we are, she said. Kron, help me reconfigure the drones. We'll create a decoy fleet. As Kron moved to assist, Table frowned. A decoy? That won't hold them off for long. It doesn't have to, Ilrix replied. It just needs to buy us time. The drones launched from the Academy's docking bays, their sleek frames darting through the void. From a distance, they appeared indistinguishable from a fully armed fleet. The Dominion ships hesitated, their formations faltering as they scanned the decoys. Now! Ilrix shouted. Activate the EMP disruptor. A device hidden within the Academy's infrastructure pulsed to life, sending a wave of electromagnetic energy through the Dominion fleet. The smaller ships were disabled instantly, their systems short-circuited. The larger vessels staggered, their shields flickering. It worked, Kron said, his voice filled with awe. We've bought ourselves some breathing room. But the victory was short-lived. The Dominion's flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons, began to retaliate. Its cannons fired relentlessly, tearing through the Academy's outer defenses. We can't hold them off much longer, Table said grimly. They'll overwhelm us. Ilrix's fingers flew over the controls. Not if we take out their flagship. Kron stared at her. You're serious? That thing's a fortress. We don't need to destroy it, Ilrix said. We just need to disable it. If we can take out their command systems, the rest of their fleet will fall into disarray. Table hesitated. And how do you propose we do that? Ilrix looked at him, her eyes burning with determination. The human way. The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless. Ilrix and Kron would pilot one of the drones directly toward the flagship, using the decoys as cover. Once inside the ship's defenses, they would detonate a pulse charge, disabling its systems. As the drone launched, Ilrix felt a surge of adrenaline. She and Kron sat side by side in the cramped cockpit, their every movement synchronized. The decoy fleet swarmed around them, drawing fire from the Dominion ships. We're in range, Ilrix said, her voice steady. Initiating final approach. The flagship loomed ahead, its hull a labyrinth of glowing conduits and weapon emplacements. The drone darted through the chaos, evading fire with agile precision. Brace for impact, Kron said as the drone slammed into the ship's exterior. Inside the flagship, alarms blared as the pulse charge detonated. The ship's systems flickered and failed, leaving it adrift. The Dominion fleet, suddenly without direction, began to falter. On board the Academy, Table watched the scene unfold with a mixture of relief and astonishment. They did it, he murmured. The remaining Dominion ships retreated, unwilling to face further resistance. The Academy was battered but intact, its students and staff safe, for now. When Ilrix and Kron returned, they were met with cheers and applause. But as they stood in the observation deck, gazing at the wreckage of the Dominion fleet, their expressions were somber. We fought like humans, Ilrix said quietly. But at what cost? Kron nodded. We won. But it felt dangerous. Table joined them, his wings shimmering in the soft light. War always has a cost. But you used humanity's lessons to save lives, not destroy them. That's the difference. Ilrix turned to him, her eyes thoughtful. Maybe that's the real lesson. Humanity's methods are powerful, but it's how we use them that matters. In the days that followed, the Academy began to rebuild. Ilrix and Kron became symbols of resilience and ingenuity, their actions sparking debates across the galaxy about humanity's legacy and the ethics of war. And as the galaxy watched, one thing became clear: humanity's influence, though feared and banned, still held the power to change the stars.